inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making this part of your day today. And just returned from Mesa, Arizona, where I was chronicling the Art of the Rhythm section with Billy Cobham, Dom Fumilaro, Dean Brown, and a bunch of other cats who are kind of at intermediate stages in their young careers, badass musicians, but learning from guys that learned from the Titans and the Masters. And I get a chance today to continue on my journey with a cat who's mercurial and exotic, to say the least, as far as in my bag. A lot of studio work, a lot of live work, but he came from the Gulf Coast, and he came from the Texas area, and it's just a high honor. Tony Braunagel, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me, man. That's great. That opening track, I haven't heard that in probably 20 years. I'm going, that sounds like me playing drums.
Well, yeah. What do you dig about that drum, that pattern, those patterns you're playing? Because that to me is like, that's where Jake Feinberg lies. That was Rabbit, Dark Saloon. It's one of my favorite albums. I mean, and honestly, the tracks, there's a ballad on the backside that's killer too. But I just want to say that. What do you like about the rhythms when you hear that? Because I don't hear that today in any kind of way, shape, or form.
Well, I grew up in the Gulf Coast area, as you said, and I think some of the influences I have were from what came out of New Orleans and came out of, that Haitian second line thing. So I've always fell into that bag a little bit. Plus, I was deeply steeped in the rhythm and blues of that area by starting to play in some ghetto clubs in my early mid-teens, you know what I mean? So I got all of that going and injected it very early. And then later on I worked with, when you heard Dark Saloon, by then I'd already worked with a bunch of Ghanaian guys. And it didn't turn me into some kind of a powerhouse polyrhythmic guy or anything. It just kind of made me find a simple way in my own style of using those type of rhythms. And that, to me, that sort of syncopation there is really great, because you got to keep it steady. You can't play a lot around it. You have to hold and let it get a vibe, you know what I mean? Or else it kind of goes over the top. But that's what I think about that. I mean, I really enjoy playing that, and great. Thanks for playing that for me.
Well,
I'm going to go back and pull that record out.
No, dude, it is smoking hot, and it's not really, I guess my question is, as it relates, the two things that the Cats talked about this weekend, and I wanted you to talk about it from your own point of view. In terms of teaching, it's ear training and it's rhythm. Now, and we're talking about guitar players keeping rhythm, and a lot of younger peeps now, they don't play with enough human beings, and every human being has their own rhythm and their own heartbeat. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you learned where your ears grew the most on the bandstand. Could have been in those ghetto clubs. I kind of thought that you were like, I had this dream that you were like sneaking into a sanctified church somewhere and like watching the rhythms of those things. But I'm serious. Like, I mean, because that's where those rhythms came from. It was the sanctified church. It was the jagged stuff. So ear training, and I know this for a drummer, it's not so much, but time within the tempo.
Well, it's feel, you know what I mean? Tempo doesn't, I mean, obviously with the digital age and everything, everybody playing to loops and click tracks and everything. And, I didn't play the click tracks growing up, but I used feel as an important thing. What I learned at an early age was, and a lot of it came from the great people that I got to play with, the late George Brown, who just passed away as a bass player. And I've told George right up to the day before he passed away, I said, you're the reason why I'm playing this music, and you're the reason why I can play this style, and he was lauding me about the things that I'd done over my career. I said, yeah, but George, I go back to the things that you said to me on the bandstand. Hey, Shorty, just stay right here in this pocket with me. you know.
I
and
dig.
and
I
I
dig.
remember
Yeah, I did.
I remember his face, and I was like I was big brothered into it, you know. And so,
But it was a
you know,
human
or
being.
else,
Yeah, you were. It was tough love. You know, it was like, stay here, man. Don't fly away. Don't get too busy. Just stay here.
yes. Don't pay any attention to those other cats playing all other CRAP, because it doesn't matter. If you play with me and stay with me, we make the singer sound good, we make the song sound good, and you keep working. I went, well, that's what I want to do, you know. So, and that's pretty much what that. And then another guy named Leo O'Neill, who's still alive. He lives in Houston. He was from New Orleans, so he kind of threw some stuff at me early on too, and he looked at me like, you know, I wasn't capable right away, Jake, to really pull it off, but he just stayed after me till he got some things in my head. And then I don't know, it's a matter of, part of it's a dance, and the other thing is that you mentioned something about the fact that young people today don't get a chance to play with human beings. I only played with human beings in my formative years. There was no other way of playing.
And you played with a lot. You played with a lot of different peeps. Is what I'm saying. A lot of different people. So it wasn't like, I mean,
a lot of different people all over. Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah. Go ahead. Continue.
That's okay. I was always pretty much, you know, a prostitute, because I would play anything, anywhere, with any time, just to play. I wanted to play, and I'm still at my age. If I go too long without playing, I start to feel weird. I start to feel disconnected with the universe.
Wow.
And but so I got all this stuff from those guys, and that was I say this often when I do teach, that one of the things that some of the young guys come to me is that exact thing, that a fluidity of being able to play some things that you want to play and play out, but a fluidity and a feel of how it makes everything else feel. I always tell every drummer that I instruct in any way, your job is to make the singer and everybody else in the band sound good.
That's a huge
point.
And when you get, that's exactly, you nailed it. That's that. Yeah, you go ahead.
And then when you're playing topical music like blues, jazz, rock, pop, whatever, and these songs that are involved, and they're not just long compositions, you have to make that song feel really good from beginning to end, like the arc of the song and all the dynamics that you have to put in there. So those are the things that I say, and I'm saying them because it comes straight out of my heart, and that's what I know that I do. And I don't really, I try not to ever veer from that. If I'm goofing off on a gig, it's like, slap me, you know what I mean?
Do you feel that a lot of cats, teachers now, the guys I was just with, heavy cats, I mean, just like burning musicians like Dean Brown, these cats, they're like, you know, they want to use metronomes with their students. Billy Cobham says, no, it comes from the core. It comes from your core. The rhythm, you don't need a metronome. He's not a metronome guy. Are you a metronome cat? I mean, as far as tempo is concerned.
I'm both. When I'm teaching, if I'm trying to get something across to someone, I want them to feel it in somewhere, as Billy said, in the core. You want them to feel it in the core, to start to feel that pulse in the core.
Right.
And the time comes out of that, because that is where you express from. If you don't express from your arms and your hands, you know, you don't express from the limb part of playing.
Exactly.
You express from down deep inside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get your clock going there, Billy's absolutely correct. You get your clock going there, then you're going to be able to adapt to anything else. So you throw up a click track. You're playing with 4 or 5 musicians in the studio. Which on Thursday I had this exact experience once again. We're playing at the 66 or 67, and it was kind of a 6/8 medium shuffle kind of type groove, you know.
Right.
And I'm playing like 16th notes on the hi-hat, and I'm just feeling where people are pushing and pulling, and I'm trying to, you know, I was also producing the session, so I've got to make it sound right, and I'm trying to figure out who's pushing, who's pulling, and then I just took the tempo up 1 notch on the click track, and everybody went, ah. It fell right in, and I went, you know, it's like, you know, it's like cool. You can just, that whole thing, it's that inner core of that tempo. Now, the artist didn't say, well, it's going to be too fast for me to sing. The artist went, oh, my God, it feels so much better, you know. And everybody was relaxed and played it, and, of course, we got to take. You know, so I do teach with the metronome. I do, once I get someone doing a certain thing, certain exercises, then I'll get them to, I'll have a metronome going. And then what I'll do is I'll try to get them to slightly manipulate the time to the metronome. In other words, play in the middle of it or play to the back of it.
Yeah, you guys all know that. You guys all are in the same bag. I mean, it's so great to talk to you guys because you are the link in the chain. I do want to ask you also about modern day blues cats playing the blues because you grew up with Texas blues. All the cats in Chicago and New York and those guys, I mean, they were singing about their lives. Most of them didn't have teeth. It was very authentic. They had huge impacts on peeps like your, maybe you, but I mean, obviously like Jorma Kaukonen from, Hot Tuna and all these peeps. So nowadays in jazz, I'm talking about, I don't hear the blues. I mean, Tootie Heath, those cats, they started in R&B bands. They started in blues bands. And I don't hear, in modern jazz, I oftentimes find myself staring at the wall because it's like, it's very technically proficient. There's a lot of facility, but I don't hear the blues. And I wanted to get your take on in terms of improvisatory music can encapsulate a lot of music. And I wonder if you feel like we have moved farther away. I don't hear the blues. I just wanted to ask you.
Well, traditionally it did move away from it. When you're talking about everybody talking about, even Charlie Parker, his progressions were pretty much blues progressions,
right.
A lot of them,
right?
And a lot of jazz from that era. And then when everybody started really getting out, and I think it was around the era of Miles, and then what's the I'm just trying to think of a saxophone player that really took it out.
Ornette Coleman. Ornette
Coleman really took it out. Everything started kind of going out, and then they stopped worrying about whether those. This is just my take.
Yeah.
They start worrying about whether that the cadence of those changes mattered as much. They found another way to paint over the top of them, and then I think modern jazz from the funk era of say Herbie Hancock, Herbie kind of brought a little bit of it back. And then you see the Christian McBride guys and stuff like that. They can go both places, because then I think what they did was jazz has always been fairly European anyhow, but I think they go in and out of that European and that blues thing, and the European thing is where you have I don't know my theory well enough to say what type of tones it is.
No, it's fine. It's the classicalization of the European classical harmonies. Are more prevalent than the blues. That's I dig.
Exactly. And then now today you have somebody like Robert Glasper, who comes out of Texas, comes out of Houston, went to Houston Performing Arts school, where several fabulous musicians came out of, and my good friend Herman Matthews, who plays drums now, living out here. He's from Houston. He's playing with Timothy B. Schmidt. He's playing with Tower Power. He's one of my pals, and we work together in different things. And he came out of that school as well. And Robert Glasper doesn't so much throw the blues in there, but you can tell somehow in Robert's playing when he gets out there that he's got a base. He's got a root. You can tell anybody. We go back to the core, right? You can't help that you were developed in a certain area. You can't help that your skin is a certain color because you grew up in a certain climate that might have darkened it or lightened it, or whatever. You can't help those normal things. And so when you're around barbecue and blues and sanctified church, it's gonna rub off.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think you were marinating in that. Can you talk about the closest? Because here's the thing. I want you to talk about two things. One, your experience with barbecue blues in the sanctified church, if at all, and then number two, I was hanging late night with Billy last night, and he said that Texas is very exclusive. It's very hard to get into Texas and do any kind of workshops if you're not from Texas. If you're not from there, you can't get in. It's become very exclusive. And I don't know if because you were born there, you have like a grandfather clause to get in there. But I wanted to know about that. It's more about broadly exclusivity versus inclusivity, and why towns like Asheville or Nashville why don't they have a big enough palette for the art of the rhythm section, like something like Cobham's doing or Braunagel might do? Why is their palette shrunk like that?
I don't. That's a tough question to really ask. I mean, to answer concisely, I guess.
It's a free association, and you can go with the barbecue and blues.
Okay, Okay, well, let's just. I will go backwards, but I'll start with this exclusivity thing. I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book about the shuffle, and it's about the blues shuffle.
Awesome.
And I've been doing it for 10 years. And Dom Familaro beats me over the head about every 6 months about when am I going to finish it. And I can't seem to finish it. I've got 6 chapters. I've got 6 styles of a blues shuffle. One is, of course, a sanctified shuffle, and another is like what I call a stumble shuffle. Some people call a flat tire or whatever. And I got a little Detroit in there. I got my version of Chicago and my version of Texas and everything. And sort of with, I guess my foreword would be a disclaimer as you could have a guy from Texas on a Friday night in Los Angeles playing in a blues club, playing what he calls a Texas shuffle. And at the same time, there's a guy in Detroit that's from Chicago playing the same exact shuffle, but he calls it a Chicago shuffle. Does that make any sense at all?
Well, only in the sense that those cats all emigrate. I mean, going back to Ahmad Jamal, Vernel Fournier was from New Orleans, but that sound was
right.
was Chicago. I think I'm reading you there. I mean, I'm really fascinated. So keep riffing with this.
So what I'm saying is that nobody really owns it. Everybody's interpretations are different. So a Nashville guy,
right,
a Los Angeles guy, a New York guy going to play on a record. What are they looking? What's the difference? New York, playing with the guys in New York, there might be more of a kind of a certain concise approach to the way they hit things and the way they play with each other. And that came from a group of guys that got hired and were proficient at something, whether it was reading or picking up or good time and or tasteful enough, and they all played together till they built a style. That's a clique. That same thing happened in Nashville when they finally really, the early Nashville drummers were extremely simple with just like brushes and hi-hat and kick drum. And now the Nashville guys are chops guys.
Right.
You look at Shannon, look at Shannon and I'm all of a sudden I'm not going to be remembering about 8 names.
It's all right.
Yeah, but you
fine.
Look at all these guys, Rich Redmond and everything. All these guys are playing a lot more to that music that had very little play to it. And then you look at the Chicago guys who played the early the early Chess record stuff, which is Delmark and Chess were the kind of the pioneers and all that.
Von Freeman and stuff. Yeah, that stuff was great.
Well, Freddie Belo, and all of that team that played on. So those are the guys. Those guys, they came out of being swing drummers and jazz drummers. And then you look at Earl Palmer, one of my good friends, God bless him, passed away years ago. Was a good friend,
man.
great guy,
Yeah.
Wonderful guy. Earl was a swing drummer, so everything he played had a little bit of swing to it. You look at all that Little Richard stuff that he played on, and all that early rock and roll and everything, and he had a little bit of swing to everything, and that's where kind of that whole crossing up the eighth, swinging the eighth note, straight eighth note against swinging the eighth note.
Yeah, you're nailing this, dude. I mean, he was a swing drummer from New Orleans. I mean, that's
right.
That's
exactly.
So, I mean, I can't. Here's the. I want to back up. Forget the exclusivity part of it. It's what you're talking about is that there was before full interconnection. There were regional sound.
Right.
There were regional sounds.
Yes.
Okay.
And
exactly. So you were describing some of the Gulf Coast sounds, and what came out of New Orleans, what came out of Chicago. Detroit and Chicago had different sounds. Atlanta had a soul scene. You know all this, and I just say to myself, the question is, has the stratification of music and the labeling of I just come from the Duke Ellington School, and I really feel like it's important for the vocabulary of music to grow. The labels have killed music. That's what I kind of wanted to ask you about. Is the labeling? Because you grew up. I don't know, man. I wouldn't know how to peg you as a drummer, and that's a good thing. You're everywhere. You're multi-genre. I mean, Hal Blaine told me that when Earl Palmer gave him his first big break, I think that was the story, and he just basically said, because he was there at the Little Richard albums, the beginning of rock and roll, and it was just like they're like, give us a rock feel, right? There was no term rock and roll. It was like, give it a feel. It was all a feel, and then you would incorporate concepts like you talking about. You'd incorporate jazz concepts in rock music or vice versa, but it's all music, and you stop labeling it.
Yeah.
Because once you stop,
exactly.
you choke it off, and that's really what it's not. I don't care about Texas letting you in or not. I care about how do vocabulary grows in music. How do you think new vocabulary can grow?
you develop a style by doing all those things you just said. When you start to marry, you take a jazz-ish drummer and you tell him to play a rock beat, and you go and you like it and you like the way it feels, and then you call him back a dozen times to play on records because he liked his approach to playing a rock beat, and then all of a sudden that's that guy's style. And now, if he's smart, he'll adapt it and settle down for a minute and go, oh, I'm good at this one. I'm going to keep this one. You know what I mean?
I dig.
And then you're going to continue to work. And then you probably end up going in the book because you get so famous at it. You know what I mean? And I think that the moving around, the word diaspora of musicians all over the country is the reason why all of this happened. Because if it hadn't have been for that diaspora of slaves coming up the Mississippi River, the Delta, and then into the Delta, and then later on all of those Delta talents, leaving to go to the industrialized city up the Mississippi River to Chicago for work, then Chicago and Chess Records would have never happened, and it carried on to Detroit as well, and then of course every time anybody moved around and did this, they developed their own churches because they had their own religion, whether it was Christianity at the time or they still had their native religions that they came over from Africa with or whatever, their rituals or whatever. And so things developed because of that. And that's my theory is how Sanctified Church really got started. And you can Google up on YouTube Sanctified Church today, and you can still see that going on in different places.
I mean, this is, I'm having, Tony Braunagel is a total, like sociology, music historian. Dude. I had no idea. I didn't know the direction this was going to go in, but I don't even Google this stuff. I have to glean it from, I don't know. I heard this Willie Banks and the Messengers. I don't know. Have you listened to that gospel?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Like that
I have.
Electric bass and drum pattern. That's what Chuck Rainey was listening to. That's where funk came from. Like when I heard that was not the gospel music that I was used to hearing. And I'm like, this is some of the bluesiest, funkiest stuff I have ever heard. Swan Silvertones, but there was
Sure.
It was, the other thing is this, beyond hearing it, like Julian Priester from the horn player, he was playing with Sun Ra, and he played with Muddy Waters. He played with Muddy Waters
wow.
in Chicago playing spirituals because his dad was a preacher and his dad started his own church. So you're right. I never thought about the idea of the fact that all these peeps from diaspora, they migrate somewhere, and then all of a sudden, naturally, they're going to open their own places of worship. That part of it is kind of enlightening to me, and to know that that's where the gospel and the blues came into play there. But did you learn under a drummer did you go to the ghetto? Can you talk about the ghetto circuit and how you learned to play? How you played the shuffle? Because it's a
My first instructor wasn't even really an instructor. He was just my best friend, and he lived down the street. His name was Willie Ornelas. He still lives here in L.A. part time, but he mostly lives in Mexico. We're still best friends. He's my big brother, the absolute family. He sold me my first drum kit. I learned how to play all my shuffles, and we sat around all day long after school and just listened to Bobby Bland and Ray Charles and all of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, when Stax came alive, boom, and then we allowed the Beatles in, and that was about it. You know what I mean? We were like total freaks about it. So but when I learned to play a Sanctified Shuffle, it was from listening to Bobby Bland's Turn on Your Love Light, and that was John Jabo Starks. I didn't know it was John Jabo. And Jabo had played with James Brown and everything, but he played that shuffle, that Sanctified Shuffle. In fact, I read something the other day that he was saying about it, that when he was asked to demonstrate it, he said it's best done with people that with the elders of the community in the church were able to clap in different ways and have tambourines and play in different ways.
Wow.
And the drummer would kind of nail it down. But he said that's where he learned to play. You know, and then while the right hand's going ding ding dang ding he said that's where he learned to play that. That's what I read something the other day in a magazine, and it's just amazing because when I heard him play that, I went, holy cow,
Yeah.
I got to learn how to play this.
Well,
And Willie, we were sitting there every day trying to figure that out. So I've learned a lot from Willie. I learned from other drummers in Texas. There was another African American gentleman. His name was Hop Hopkins, and I used to go see him play on Sundays at the jam sessions because not being 21, I could get into those because the club owners. I got to know the club owners when I was a teenager, and I got to know the cops, the security guards at the black clubs in Houston as well. And I could go and knock on a door, and then the cop named Tiny would come over and say, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "Can I listen to some of this music?" And he would put me over behind a chair somewhere and hide me. And go, "Don't you dare move." And I go, "Okay." And he'd let me listen and check it out. So I got to hear a lot of early stuff like that because I really was driven. I can't say right now, oh my God, that was the only thing I thought about. I was dragged to it. I was so drawn to it. I had
You had a calling. You had a calling to do it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And I'm well in my 60s now, and I'm still doing that. And when I sit down to play, it's like I told George Brown before he passed. I said I was on a session 2 days ago, George, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to make this track settle down, and I couldn't. And your face popped into my mind, and you said, "Just stay right here in this groove, in this pocket with me, Shorty." And I went, and that's what I did. And all of a sudden, the track came together, and we got one. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, wow.
I got lucky. I got spiritualized by it, I guess, in a lot of ways. So, but so growing up in Texas had a lot to do with how I played. When I lived in New York for a short period, then I moved to London for 5 years, then I moved back to California. I've always been a Texas drummer, and that might have limited my employment in some ways, but it also was a flag for other people to check me out. Hey, look how this guy plays. So I used to kind of think when I got to LA, man, I can't play that really tight, wonderfully beautiful way that Jeff Porcaro was able to play, But I could lean toward the Jim Keltner style, you know what I mean? Because that was closer to me, because he was from the South as well.
Yeah, he's tall.
And when I was in when I was out here and I got the Ricky Lee Jones gig, I had to woodshed Steve Gadd. Well, I never got a lesson from him. I just woodshedded the hell out of it because I had to learn all of his parts off the records that he played on for Ricky Lee Jones. So all those different elements kind of formed who I am today. You know what I mean?
Oh, I did.
And
I did. Go ahead.
I played with African guys. I played with Jamaican guys. I played with Johnny Nash. So I learned reggae in 1971.
Were you in England at that time?
No, I was still living in Texas.
See, I like
and then when I moved to New York.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so because I just want you to talk to the audience about a lot of people don't grasp the idea of the polyrhythms in African music, but can you talk about how it's all just sort of a jigsaw puzzle and it all fits together and actually what kind of African percussion you play, unless you were on a trap set, but how it all fits together? Did you play djembe? Did you play congas? Like, what did you take away from that?
Yeah.
I play a tiny bit of congas. I play a couple of things in djembe. I wouldn't call myself either one of those. I mean, on a recording session, if I need a simple conga track and I can't call Lenny Castro, who's my first call, I do it myself, or I go call someone. I got tons of friends who are percussionists I can call. Machito Sanchez, Wally Ingram, just anybody in this town. There's tons of them. But I got it because I was able to get this earlier on from when I was in Johnny Nash's band. He had 4 guys from Texas in his rhythm section, and he had 4 guys from Ghana, West Africa.
Holy.
3 were horn players, and 1 was a conga player.
Wow. Wow.
And so after sessions,
wow.
I mean, after sound check.
Oh, yeah, okay.
After sound check,
Yeah.
sometimes the Ghanaians would say, "Hey, Tony, you stay right there on the kit. We're going to show you some things." and I would go, "Okay." Sound check was over, and all of a sudden, I'm getting the lesson of my life. And these guys would show me stuff, and they would make me turn the beat around and make me play things against what I'd grown up playing. Though having the Gulf Coast thing from the little bit of the New Orleans thing I heard, it kind of fit, and I got it, and it helped me develop my style. That's why when you played that Rabbit track, I'm going, all of that is in there. All of that is somewhere in my core that we're talking about, that I had to learn how to play all that stuff like that. I still use it today. I have things that I learned from playing with the Africans that I superimpose over a straight R&B beat as a drum fill or a little section that, goes somewhere else. I still use that stuff. And it's amazing how it's stuck in my head all those years. But those are the things I'm sure Billy Cobham can tell you. Any of the drummers you've talked to, Jim Kelton, everybody will tell you you've got certain influences along the way, and those are part of your style. That's why I was saying earlier, when a jazz drummer plays a rock beat, you like him, all of a sudden that becomes his style, and he better recognize it. That's that's who I used to think that I wanted to be everybody. Especially when I moved to Los Angeles, I wanted to play with all the jazz cats. I wanted to play with all the funk jazz cats. I wanted to play with the rock guys. I wanted to play with the R&B artists. And then I started out with, Eric Burden. And then I went to Ricky Lee Jones, which is a totally different thing. And then I went back did a show thing with Bette Midler on tour for a year. And then I joined Bonnie Raitt's band. And that's kind of when I got back to my full-on roots, and it took me away from the other things that I was learning, which would have been like maybe probably end up playing with Larry Carlton or something,
right.
Playing that kind of Los Angeles funk jazz or whatever.
Yeah,
and even last year I got a call to do a Larry Carlton gig, and I'll be honest with you. At first I was scared shitless. Right. I can't cuss on the radio.
No. You're all right. This is extra. This is podcast. We're good. We're all over the world, but you can curse.
I said, wow, I've got a shed to do this. I mean, I knew a lot of the songs, and it was great for me because I sat down and I turned off the phone and email for like a week and went into my garage area where I practice, and I said, leave me alone. And I just got that style back in me. It took me 4 or 5 days. And I went, why? The first couple of days I went, why are they calling me? I don't play this way anymore. And by the end of the week, I had it back. It was amazing. What a growing experience. At my age, at 67, here I'm still trying to grow and get it back, And I did so well that he asked me back for a couple of gigs, 5-6 months later. I couldn't make them. I was busy, but I got asked back. So I thought, well, there you go. I can't feel bad let myself down about the fact that I think I let that part of my chops go. It came back. It's still in there, man.
No, it's part of listen. It's part of the gumbo, man. Music is a meal.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm marinating in this. My daughters and I, we rock out to this tune. We have been since you came on my radar. So let's just take a listen to this, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Cool.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, the Jewish Federation of Southern Arizona, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and we thank them for their support so we can play that island funk rock blues for Tony Braunagel, man. Don't I think that tune would be a top 40 hit in today's lexicon. I really do. I mean, that thing is.
It's funny how Island Records had a great sensibility of allowing artists to be who they were and let them develop in their own way. And I sometimes wondered that they lacked, say the marketing of getting out to the pop part of it. Though they had hits with All Right Now, It's Free, and all the and whatever Traffic had and whatnot. But
and they did a lot. They did a lot of. They did a lot of reggae too. I mean, they did.
Tons of reggae.
They were.
That was Bob Marley.
They cared about. I mean, that's what I'm saying, Tony. Is that it was not just Island. It was like Bonnie Raitt, Bruce Springsteen. None of those cats had top 40 hits their first 2 or 3 records. I mean, they let those guys figure it out, and then they also had a touring circuit. But all I'm saying is, my question was that you grew up in Texas, you had the exposure to the Ghana, the cats, they were teaching you to float, and then you decided to go to England, and that's even more of a hotbed. What were the gigs like over there? Were you playing like with rock, like Indian tabla players? I mean, it's very experimental over there. I'm just really that pocket of time in England was ferocious because Afrobeat was percolating. I mean, it was a very strong international thing going on. So I'd like you to take us through that part of your career.
I would, when I first moved over there, the Ghanaians all came from London. They all lived in London. So when I moved to London, I was invited by my bass player buddy, Terry Wilson, and I, who were in bands in Texas and moved to New York together. We were invited by Rabbit, who came from our neighborhood in Houston.
Really?
Yeah, he was a Houston boy as well. So he wanted that feel that we had over there. And he couldn't get it over there in London. And he said, so he went to Chris Blackwell and he said, hey, man, I want to bring my guys over. Chris, well, okay. So the deal was we had a house to live in, or an apartment to live in on Kings Road, Chelsea, unbelievably prime real estate. And we had a stipend every week, whether we worked or not. And we worked for Island Records. But if we weren't on call for Island, we were able to go out and do recording sessions for other people.
Wow.
Pretty much an incredible sort of a kind of a dream,
That's awesome.
to have
that
this opportunity.
So awesome. That was the other thing. I mean, dude, the real estate, the cost of living has crushed artists, because I mean, you were living you had a good accommodations, you could, cost of living wasn't that hot, and you could sing for your supper, and whether you played or not. So what other gigs? I mean, I'd love. First of all, are you on any Nash records that you don't get listed on the credits for?
I'm on. I wrote a song called "Standing in the Rain" for one of his records, and I played on it. And I played on several tracks on that. I think it was the record after "Merry Go Round."
I guess what I'm saying is that the one with the drumming and the trumpet, the horn sections and stuff? Is there a record with that band on it?
No, there isn't. He didn't make a record with us.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. The management was really, really screwed up at the time and really didn't take opportunities that he should have from that. Johnny was doing his pop and reggae with us, and yet he had this badass Texas rhythm section and all these Ghanaians. And if he would have put the influences together, he would have done something revolutionary. But he was staying into his reggae, pop thing, R&B thing, and that's what he was, trying to continue to develop because that's where he had his success. And then when that broke up because it was mismanaged terribly, and we all were kind of going in different ways, we got together as we were called Sons of the Jungle, with the 4 Ghanaians and the 4 Texas guys.
Sons of the Jungle, dude.
Of the Jungle.
Oh, baby.
And we got together in a studio. A friend of mine was an engineer, and we went in there and we recorded like 4 songs and of different originals from different people in the band, and we weren't able to do anything with it. We came close a couple of times.
You must still have the masters of that, dude.
I think
I would
Terry
love to hear if you got
have the
anything like that. I would that to me, that's serious. I would. So anyway, did you do any originals in that session?
Yeah, we did. They were all original songs that we did. You know, we had 4 songs that we recorded, and we walked with no studio bill or anything. The friend that was the engineer just kind of said he was just in there when no one else was in there recording us. It was a fucking 8-9 piece band. And then when it was done, he handed me the tape, and I said, "Hey, what do I owe you?" He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about. You better just go to the car right now." And I said, "Well, I don't want to rip anybody off." But it turns out the studio we were at was owned by a guy who was a huge ripoff to other people in the music business. So we kind of felt a little bit of justice in walking out with the tapes on that situation. Normally I'd say, this is going to come back later, but it never did, and it never surfaced in that respect. But anyhow, so we took that vibe, and that's what we had while we were with Nash, and we were hanging out together in Texas for a little while, waiting to find out where we were going next. And go
ahead. I didn't mean to. I wanted to go back to the England thing.
I'm getting to England.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that ended, and then I got the offer to go and work at Island, and Terry and I said, yeah, how we're going to pay for a ticket over there. So we went to our publisher, and our publisher said, a great idea. I'll buy your ticket over there. And
how easy!
Unbelievable. And he would we would write songs for our publisher, and he would give us £50 for every song we submitted to his publishing. And so there was no quality control. I would write anything, and I get £50. Back then, you could live for a week on £50. You know, and so, I'd write a couple songs, and once a month we'd go in and we record 2 or 3 of each of our songs, and we'd collect £150 or £200 or whatever, and they would pay for the studio and everything, and we did that to help us get along. But we were working at Island and doing all sorts of. Anytime at Island needed a rhythm section, Terry and I were the guy. They would throw us into, with all these people.
Oh, are you kidding me? Wait, hold on. What are you?
That's how we got in. Sorry.
No, because were there like authentic Jamaican Rastas coming in for reggae sessions that you were doing? You were the rhythm section?
No, we didn't play on the reggae sessions. We didn't play on those.
I need to know what you played on Island, because now I'll just collect. I'll find it, because there are probably albums that you never gave credit accompany us on the back of the album, maybe.
Well, the one in particular would be Speedy Keen. He was in Thunderclap Newman.
Hold on.
That was a record that got released.
Speedy King.
Yeah. Keene. Speedy Keen. He was one of the things that we did. We were only kept that job for about 6 months with Island, but I stayed there for 5 years.
Yeah, no, I found. Okay, no, hold on. How many of his? There are two different albums. Did you play on both of them? Because because there's one that's like Speedy. It's entitled Speedy, but then there's one also. You Know What I Mean?
That's it.
So there's 2 different ones. I see. There's one here, and I didn't see you as there was nobody listed, but so there's 2. There's a bunch on YouTube. There's a Positively 4th Street cover, Old Fashioned Girl, but then there's this other one. You Know What I Mean? But so Speedy Kane was in there. Anytime that they needed a rhythm section, you were getting a stipend, and you were getting a stipend, and then would you get additional compensation for doing the sessions?
Occasionally, but mostly not. Usually, we had a place to live in, and we had the money that they gave us every week, and then sometimes it would turn into extra money, but sometimes it didn't. It was just we got that money and we showed up, and we would spend hours and hours and hours working on stuff, and it was either at St. Peter's Square studio where the Island offices is, or it would be at the one in. Not Ladbroke Grove, the other Island studios.
Okay, I don't want to get too. I don't want to get too inside, too deep in the weeds. But it's like, no. I want to. I got to ask you this question. This is very important. So it says, you know what I mean? There's another one that's at the record shop right now called Previous Convictions. Speedy Keen.
Really?
Previous Convictions, but I don't see Braunagels. I don't know if there's any credits on it. I just would be fascinated. This is absolutely essential because people think that history is. There's the truth is still there. There's still more truth. So we always need to find, Anyway, think about it. I don't know if you it doesn't really matter. The point is that you were living large. Did you go off, did you were you getting off on Fela Kuti at that time? Did you ever see Fela play? Did you see Tony Allen play?
And there were other African bands around town that I used to see that were local African bands.
Right.
West African, Congolese. There wasn't a lot of Malian stuff going on there. Kora and everything. But there was definitely the West African guys, the Ghanaians and the Nigerians. Lots of Ghanaians and Nigerians in London, and they were playing a lot of the recording. They were playing gigs around town, and right now I'm blank on the names of the names will come back in a minute.
Yeah,
anyhow, I used to go, and they would play in clubs, and I would just go see them play. Boom, and I got to know some of the guys because I knew some of the Africans from the guys that I knew, George Vanderpuy and Pete Vanderpuy, George Lee, Eddie Kwanzaa, Willie Cheatham. Those were all the guys, and because I knew those guys, whenever I would run into the other ones, they go, "Oh man, you know Willie Cheatham, man," So like, yeah, you're the guy who plays drums with him sometimes.
Yeah, man.
The little white boy from Texas, who would like sneak in, and it was fun. It was really, really fun.
No, I was going to say, can you talk about? I mean, even when you moved out to LA, do you feel like how strong are those cultural roots today? How lucky were you to experience that live, and how much live, world middle America music, middle America's music is there today? Do you feel like I mean, listen, Larry Willis from Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Hugh Masekela, he said, when you stifle the culture, that's how you get another Hitler. And I don't want to get into a whole deep discussion, but it's like Harlem is Harlem. It's getting gentrified. L.A. is what it is. It's insanity. I was just out there, and it's like but do you feel that the cultures have been stifled? Street culture has been stifled from when you were just getting on the bandstand and getting going.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's really hard to find those cultures. They're guarded. They don't exist when they exist in the say. Let's just use the word ghetto or those parts of town. When they exist, they're kind of held quiet. You don't really get a chance to go see them. I mean, the only rituals you still get are like that, are kind of like that, are juke joints. You know what I mean? In Mississippi and the South and places like that. Unless you go to New Orleans, you can still get it in New Orleans. I don't know where you're going to get it in New York. I mean, they might have some circles in Harlem, you know what I mean? In Detroit, I'm sure you could go deep and find some of those things, but they're hard to find.
Why do you think that they have to keep quiet? Is it because that
it's just because they got programmed, their kids got programmed just as much as any other kid that got programmed. And once the programming got in there, it didn't matter what color you were, what part of town you lived in. You're going to get programmed with something, and that's how the record labels and radio stations took over. They've shoved all this stuff down our throats, and they expect you to listen to nothing against the talents that get through, from The Voice or whatever.
Right.
Nothing against these people. I know some of them, and I've seen some of them win and whatnot, but the stuff is like stuffed down your throat. I don't make that kind of music. I make my records, because I have a freedom with it, and I'm pretty well established with it. My records that I produce are all blues and R&B records, and maybe a little rocky and maybe a little folky.
I love it. I love it, dude. I mean, but it's great. What would be your advice to peeps out there? I mean, that don't have the established track record, that like you in today's world, that are searching for authenticity, that are searching for their individuality, and not having the accessibility to ethnic music the way you did. I mean, is it you got to just sit in your room and go through Spotify?
You can find this ethnic music. You just got to start looking, digging it out, man. Go and dig from a region. Go dig from Mali. Go dig from a Ghanaian, West African stuff. Go dig the Congolese, vibe of it. They're all different because of the terrain. One place had trees, so they made drums. Another place was desert, so they took gourds and put strings on them. I mean, basically, that's it.
No, I mean, you're breaking. No, you're going to the source. This is what the Jake Feinberg show is about: is going directly to the source. Except you had a chance to play with real human beings, and they're still.
Yes, I did.
And I will tell you this: in Tucson now, after, going macro and reaching the cats, I've gone to the local people and I'm like, holy crap, there's some badass cats here that are doing their thing. And, it's just melded into the programming that we've been deluged with. And that's a very, very important point because, I just wonder how, not reprogramming, but, if, I don't know, sometimes cats will say we need a total, like you're doing what you're doing on your own, but on before it was dozens and you had people like George Avakian, Clive Davis, John Hammond, whether you like these guys or not personally, they dug the music. Like they got off on the music. They got off they got off
John Hammond was right. Those guys were only there for the passion of doing
yeah, man.
It.
What I'm saying is that I don't see how I just want to add vocabulary. I want to keep increasing vocabulary in music. And I don't know how to, that's what I've kind of been doing, is just pushing back against this sort of Live Nation owns 90% of the live venues. They all look the same. The formulaic quality of, okay, I mean, and so what I'm just asking you is basically, what do you do? What is your advice for cats to feel liberated because they got to get stuff out of their system in this time? And, they don't have the accessibility of the bandstand. What is your advice to them?
Well, I guess what I would say is because this is really prolific right now, and that is you can research anything, obviously, with go under the big G and find anything you want if you start looking. And the more you dig and dig and dig and dig and dig and something, if you start looking through the history of it and everything, and you dig till you find something, and you find a way to find a recording of it or whatever, you can find all of these things. And then you start to, if I had advice to do what you just prescribed you think should be done or whatever, I would say sit down and start playing some of this. Play along with it, or get a couple of friends over. If you're young and you're teenagers or whatever, you got some kids or whatever, and go give them a lesson in West African music. Give them a lesson in Arab music. I mean, all of these tons of. Also, we're forgetting to talk about another part of this, and that is how much of this music really comes from the Arab Peninsula. The Arab Peninsula, really, you know what I mean? A lot of these rhythms and all the melodies that we hear, you hear a pop singer go,
yeah.
I'm sorry, that's an Arab melody, that melisma is an Arab melody,
It's like those old belly
that's
dancing.
Kind of how,
yeah, I dig.
Yeah, that's kind of how Cuban music was born. And when you read the history about Cuban music, how it came from Spain, it was the Arabs and the Catholics till they had a big fight and till the Crusades and stuff like that broke everything up, and people were all living there. The Phoenicians, which were the Jewish
Bedouins.
Bedouins. I was going to say gypsies. Yes,
Same thing.
As they moved around back then, and all those influences all came together in Spain at a certain point, and that culture with the Yoruban culture from Africa ended up in Cuba, and that's why we have songs in our vocabulary that are pop songs that go boom, 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 boom. That's Cuba. That's not American. That's Cuba, and it's not Cuba. It's African.
Oh yeah. I mean,
so it's amazing how these things are like come to you. So my advice would be, if you want to get out of the doldrum of just playing what you and your buddies in the neighborhood play, you know what I mean? If you want to get out a little, you got to go out and look for it and find some stuff and learn to play it. And you can find anything you want now. You can find anything you want. You go back and you can just go back as far as New Orleans for a start. Go back to New Orleans and go and get everything you can out of New Orleans, going back as far as you can find it from New Orleans. And when you start looking through that, then you're going to see little tabs, on the Wikipedias that say, "Oh, let's hit this blue highlighted thing." You hit that, whoa! You just open up a whole new vortex. You know what I mean? It's amazing.
Oh.
It's just amazing. I don't have enough time to go after it and look at it myself. You know what I mean?
No,
like
absolutely not. And
caught
some
up late at
people
night.
are, they're multisensory. They don't necessarily they might struggle with the printed word, and so it's important to. I mean, that's why vinyl is incredibly. You learn where the term limbo came from. It was the slave dances and the chains.
Yeah.
It's like
Sure.
so. You don't read that on Spotify. Okay, if you just type in
Right.
Cuban music. So it comes up in his style. You have cats learning styles in academia now with really gifted professors who, by the way, are not always the best teachers, okay? The
Right.
best players. All right, so you're learning styles. You're not learning feel, and you're not learning time feel. So, and your ears are locked. I mean, a lot of the jazzers. But, here's I want the Tony Braunagel, you can riff on this. Very interested about how you went from being, if you ever were a craftsman, or have you always been an artist? Because there's this fine line that exists even more today, because you can play these gigs, these top 40 gigs, and get cash for them and sing for your supper. But cats are burning out because they're just craftsmen. They're not artists. And I wanted you to talk about that evolution from becoming an artist.
Okay, I'm swirling. So what I'm doing, I'm looking.
Just riff, man.
I'm
Just
swirling
riff.
right now.
Yeah, no, you're good. No.
I'm looking right. Yeah, I think you just, you it becomes a craft when you learn to play a paradiddle. You know what I mean? And then you work off your paradiddles, and then you get your rudiments together. Then you find that you're working on your craft, and you become an artist when you start to play the music with the right kind of people. And you can take your craft in with certain situations musically, and you're just a craftsman. You're a musician craftsman. You're partially an artist because you're playing music, which is art and the language of the gods, but you're still not quite doing it until you. For me, okay, here's how it hits me. I was playing in nightclubs, and I was an artist, and I was playing in like 10-piece soul bands when I was like 19. Up until 19
you were kicking a big soul band.
I was kicking a big soul band, and I was
sick.
the youngest one. I was the youngest one in the band. I was always the punk little kid, nicknamed Shorty or whatever the hell it was, So, and then I decided, well, I didn't like this 6 night a week, same thing every night playing, just fabulous cover songs. Don't get me wrong. But I got kind of tired of the fact that every 6 nights a week I went there for 4 hours or for 4 sets, and I played these shows and these cover songs.
Exactly.
And I wanted to get out of that. I wanted to be that's when the English thing was really happening, and people were bands were really starting to thrive, and people were writing songs. It was after the Beatles came out, a few years after the Beatles. So it's like 1967, and I graduated from high school in 67. So 68. 69 is when I finally got away from it. And then I wanted to be in a band, and I didn't want to be a sideman. And that's when I think, because I was feeling that artistic thing going, I didn't know what it was, but something was welling up inside me going, you got to bust out, man. You got to get out. You got to be more than this. You're limiting yourself. And I don't know that I increased my craft. I don't know that I got so much better in my craft right away. But I certainly got artistic right away.
What was the first?
And I felt
what was that first band that you locked in with in 68, 69 that you stayed with for a while and really began to develop your? Basically you were playing melodically and you were playing your own voice.
Correct. I was playing in a band. It was a band called Buttermilk Bottom.
Did you ever cut any records or anything like that, or no?
We were signed to Polydor, and we cut a single, an A and a B side. We cut a few more tracks in that, but they released an A and a B
Buttermilk Bottom.
side.
Is Buttermilk Bottom?
Yeah.
That is sick. Oh my God, I love this.
And we did a version of a traffic song called "Dear Mr. Fantasy."
Sure.
Was our single.
Play me a tune.
And it was produced by Vic Briggs, that was from Sky Pilot of fame of Eric Burden. So, but boy, many years before I met Eric Burden, I was friends with Vic Briggs first from that session. They flew us to Memphis. We recorded, had Memphis horns on it, and we were the rhythm section, and I forget the guy's name that was producing it. I think it was something Kessler or something like that. And I was talking to the guitarist from that band last night for like 2 hours because we haven't caught up in a while.
and one of the lead singers of the band just passed away about 2 weeks ago. So we were just reflecting, our youth and the fact that we're still here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, great.
But that was my first band. That's where, yes, very much grateful, and that's where I felt my artistic thing start. And from there, I went, okay, what's the next thing? Oh, write songs. Oh, how do you do that? Oh, you sit down with a guitar, and I could play 3 chords in a guitar. You go jinga, 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 oh, then all of a sudden words start coming out of your mouth, and then you're writing songs, and you're going, how do I do that? Well, you just sit down until something comes out, and then you start vibing on it or whatever. So that's when I started to feel my artistic thing come together. And I never went away from it not completely, except for when I moved to Los Angeles, I became a hired gun again.
Well, see, I got this impression because you're not, you have this incredibly sort of, it's a very shifty credit list with, you were on a lot of records, but you were not beholden to the studio scene. I've interviewed all the cats that were in there, and they're all beautiful people, and I think that they are all beautiful artists in their own way. But so many times, it's you come in and you are hired for a specific reason, for your craft, not for your art.
Right.
Yeah, but you weren't one of those guys that was like, I want to go in at, before the sun comes up and leave when the sun goes down, even though you probably did that. You didn't want to do that all the time. That wasn't what you wanted.
I would have been happy if I'd gotten more of those calls, but by the time I got here, the click was pretty tight, and I remember sitting in the car one night
the
with
click was tight. I love the click was tight.
Yeah, the click was very, very tight here, man, and I experienced that in New York when I lived there as well. I didn't get into that click,
I need to get into the New York thing. What happened? Were you hanging at 52nd Street playing jazz gigs? I really want to know about New York.
No, I was in a band from Texas called Bloons. And
yes,
we got signed.
Yeah, Bloons. What to break that down? That's huge.
We got signed to Evolution Records, and Ron Johnson produced us, and he was also the producer of Wicked Lesser, which later became Kiss. Jeez. And we were working at Electric Lady Studios, and I got a few sessions up there, but it was really hard to break into that scene as a session drummer. So I felt that right away. When I went to London, it was a little easier because I was brought into a studio. And so people found out about a Texas drummer living in London, and they went, oh, let's hire this guy. So I got outside sessions because of the distinction of being from somewhere different and having a different style that people were looking for. During that period in England, they were looking for that Southern style. You know what I mean? They were looking for the guys that had that grease and everything. And I had grease. So then when I moved to Los Angeles...
Can I ask you a question, though? I'm very curious about this. You had a very unique style, Texas style. Who were the cats? Was it like Pretty Purdy and those cats? That's who was there, right? It was Grady Tate and those guys, or who were you? I don't know who you were a certain type of player, who was there?
I came up from those older R&B guys, and I just managed to imprint my style on whatever I did. When I got in Buttermilk Bottom, we were doing a little bit more of a rock thing, but it wasn't a hard, heavy rock thing. It still had funk and feel and R&B in it. So when I would listen to Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, obviously I was a big Bonzo fan.
Sure.
He's the ultimate in English rock feel drummers. He had the best feel of all of those guys. And
better than Ringo. Better than Ringo, you think?
Different. Ringo had a certain feel for the song. Bonzo had a feel for the way they played. It was a little more edgy. It was quite a bit edgier than Ringo. Mitch Mitchell was a good friend of mine.
Really?
I knew Mitch really
well. Badass.
We played together.
Wow.
Sometimes we were in a two drummer band for about 2 minutes.
All right, let's go through that 2 minutes. You were you played double drums with Mitch Mitchell?
Yeah, we did like a half a dozen rehearsals or something for a band that they were putting a super group together. It was ultimately going to be, Edgar Winter was in it, going to be in it, and I can't even remember who all the other players were, but William Smith was playing keyboards.
I love, dude. Rest in peace, man. William Smith, dude. I never got a chance to talk to him. I
He
never.
was one of my good friends, man. He was great.
Were you
I got a million-
hanging out with Danny Korchmar and Willie Smith back in the day? I mean, because those guys were super tight. David Clayton Thomas.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not. No, but Smitty was a good friend of mine.
Dude,
so
I love that dude. That
we
dude
hung a
was
lot.
the man, dude. I mean, I wish I could have hung with that guy because he had a smile on his face every freaking time that and his playing is badass too. But it's just great.
His playing is a great songwriter, everything, you know.
Right.
But we got to play together. Mitch and I got to play together for a minute, and it was really fun. And I'd met him in London before at my at a small demo studio when I was doing the publishing demos. And he knew the guy who owned the studio, and one day and he says, "My friend Mitch is coming over," and I went, "Mitch, okay." Walks in, of course, it's Mitch Mitchell, and my jaw dropped, right? So but we became fast friends right away. And then when he was over here, we were friends and hanging out. And I had a red Sparkle Gretsch drum kit that he just was totally, he wanted it bad. He was infatuated with it. He was like, you must get rid of that drum kit someday and give it to me, of course, Why don't I just pack it in my car right now and I'll drive away. You'll never notice. You'll want, and I'm going, no, Mitch, no, the red Gretsch, Sparkle Gretsch. I'm doing you a favor by letting you play that while I play my other kit. So, but we were good pals, and I missed it.
Did you enjoy? Sometimes I think. Sometimes I do miss in the live context double drums. It was very prevalent with a lot of the rock bands and psychedelic rock bands. Joe Cocker. I mean, Keltner didn't like doing it. I transcribed this thing the other day with him, and he was talking about for my interview. He was talking about Jimmy Gordon. Originally having that real military style and really wanting to get into his repertoire. But once Keltner got that down, he said, "I wanted to play what was in my head," and basically, what was your experience playing double drums with Mitch? I mean, did you play time and then fills, or how did that even work?
I love double drums. I actually enjoy.
Why do you love double drums? I love double.
I don't know. It's just you can't. It's a train. You can't stop it. It's like I love playing in a band with a percussionist or whatever.
Right.
It's like you can't. People can't pull on it or whatever. It doesn't. Everybody else in the band has to go with it. I don't know if it's not a power trip really. It's just this wonderful float, And a few of my really special moments were, to this day, Greg Bissonette and I did a double drummer thing, just impromptu one night at a big benefit. And Greg to this day will come up to me and go, "Man, I remember that night we did a double. Man, that was the best time I've ever had with a double drummer." And then I did one with the Sacred Hearts Blues Brothers kind of hybrid band at the House of Blues once for a grand opening with JR, with John Robertson.
Sure.
And there was two drum kits up, and we just play it, and we looked at each other and went, "This is too easy," And every time I see him, I see him all the time at the DW drum workshop situation, because I'm a drum workshop artist, and we're good friends with the people that run it, and we have a Monday night football thing we all go to, but he often mentions, he goes, "No, man, when it's double drums, it's me and Braunagel." So I really enjoyed it. I was asked to be in the Doobie Brothers at one point.
Get out of here!
And and I turned it.
Did they have
down.
double? I didn't know they had double drums though. They had a double drum setup.
Yes.
Please talk. I didn't. I'm sorry. You're dropping knowledge right now. This is like 70, 71 area.
Hold on a second. I'm doing. Someone keeps trying to call me.
No problem. Talking to Tony Braunagel.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're gone. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew the Doobies when I was in a band called Crawler. We opened up some shows for the Doobies in England, and then we got to be good friends with Keith Knutson, and stayed friends with Keith all those years. And when the other drummer left, whose name I can't remember, Keith called me and asked me if I wanted to do this. This is back in like 1979, right before I moved here. And so I was asked Keith said, "Listen, man, I want to see if you're interested in this and this gig before you move to." I said, "Well, I'm moving to California." He goes, "Oh, that's great." He said, "But what happened was Michael McDonald's in the band, and Michael McDonald chose Chet McCracken to be the other drummer." So Keith had an opportunity to get another guitar player in the band, John McPhee. So at that point, Michael said, "Well, look, you got McPhee, so I'm going to get the drummer I want." Blah blah blah. And they got Chet McCracken, who's an excellent drummer and a friend of mine. And all those years went by. Chet left, and the band went through changes. Keith stayed, and when Keith passed away, it was kind of passed around the band. Tommy Johnson had seen me play with Taj Mahal. We played on a show together. And I knew Kim Simmons, and I knew John McPhee. And, of course, being good friends with Keith, they thought that I was kind of a shoe-in to be the guy to do it. So McPhee called me and asked me to play on it. And I said, yeah, I think so. But at the same time, honestly, Jake, I didn't want to go on the road. I was in that period there where I was working on a TV show as an actor, part-time actor, and I was getting plenty of session work around town, and I didn't want to smell the diesel, if that makes any sense.
No, I dig, man. Can we get a year on this?
So,
what year is this?
2006.
Okay, so I'm saying the original, the McCracken drum thing occurred in like 79, 80 or something like that. What year did that occur?
Yeah, that was about 79. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then fast forward to 2006. They're asking you to go on tour. You didn't want to go. Go ahead, pick it up from there.
Yeah, let's see. I've got Keith up here. He passed away in 2005, so it was just after that. So it was probably late 2005. And I just didn't want to go on the road. And they were offering me a sideman gig as a second drummer. But, I mean, they were going to audition other people. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten it, but I was called from the inside. This wasn't like cattle call. This was like first call.
Yeah.
Are you interested in doing this? We might look at some other drummers. And I went, well, yeah, I'm kind of interested. And then I went, I wasn't really sure. And then the manager called me, and Bruce Cohen, who I knew, and I said, Bruce, I'm really not dying to go on the road right now. I should be really happy that you called me, and I should jump on this gig. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just don't feel like traveling that much right now. But I'll tell you what, if you make me a member of the band instead of a sideman, maybe that would work for me. And He goes, "Oh, well, I don't know if I can. Because I knew that.
Oh my God.
I knew that pretty much tripled the pay right there, and so, of course, he got back and said, "I can't really do that, but we're interested in having you come up and play and see if you want to do it." So I didn't. So I stayed away from it, but it probably would have been a great experience for me, and I'm still friends with Kim Simmons and Patrick Simmons, and still friends with John McPhee, and so it's just interesting. All these relationships over the years, it's like at the same time that 1979 thing happened with the Doobies, and I thought, ooh, this might be cool, and I would have jumped on it then.
Absolutely. I mean, it was cooked. The band was cooked. But you know what it is? I admire. I just feel like Gradney also told me, I just look at you guys and what along the way, what you guys have helped me learn about myself at 39 is that you are your own best advocate. And when you do when the time is right and when the time is not, and you don't need handlers and you don't need, you hear the horror stories about people getting ripped off or, Grant Green getting paid in heroin or Charlie, whatever. Okay. But it's like,
sure,
you are your own best compass. So whether it was, it didn't happen when you wanted it to happen, and then they come calling and it really wasn't, you weren't feeling it. And you and you try to negotiate, and then you said no. And I I just dig that attitude as opposed to just because, I just think that you ultimately you have to have that sort of that integrity. Now, that being said, I would like you to talk. When I interviewed Gradney, he talked about you and Johnny Lee Shell. He calls it the Texas contingent. I really want to know, how did Gradney come into your life?
Well, I knew of Kenny because I was playing with Bonnie Raitt, and I knew of Kenny because Little Feat was closely related to Bonnie Raitt. I played with Bonnie from 84 to 91 or something like that. And during that period, I'd already met Kenny, but we never became friends. And one day we got called to work on a Jimmy Barnes record. He's an Australian guy. He's kind of like he was in Cold Chisel. He's kind of like the Bruce Springsteen of Australia.
Wow.
We got called to play on that record for Geffen Records, and we were in a studio together for 2 or 3 days and playing pool in between cutting tracks and got to be friends. And, we've been best friends ever since. So, we developed a friendly relationship and to the point that we're like best friends. You know what I mean? So that's how I know him.
Did you, I mean, I guess when you got to LA after Buttermilk Bottom, because I know Little Feat was starting to cut records down there, but did you cross paths with Gradney back then or not at all?
No, I didn't. I saw Little Feat play, but Gradney was in the band. The first time I saw Little Feat play was Roy Estrada, Bill Payne, Lowell, and Richie, and they played in one of the hippie cafes that I was in my neighborhood in Houston. You know what I mean? So that was how I knew of Little Feat before then. And then when Paul and Kenny and Sam joined the band, that's when Little Feat really blew up. That's really when it became an amazing band. Still, I mean, Kenny and I got to play with Kenny and Paul and Fred last week.
You did?
Just kind of,
oh, that's class. I'm so glad you guys are just having off-the-cuff sessions, dude.
We had a gig, Paul. There was a thing at a winery where Paul and Fred were just doing their acoustic thing. They go out and do that, and Paul said, "Look, man, I got this thing out here, this club called Bogies, and blah blah blah. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." So I woodshedded as many of the songs as much as I could, Right. And I've always been a Richie freak. Anyhow, he and I were really, really good friends, and I've always esteemed his playing very, very high. And so, I learned the tunes as best I could, and we went and played. Of course, it's never the same as the record, or it's never the same as the live band from last year or the one from 10 years ago. So it doesn't matter what you study; you just got to kind of feel your way around it. And I did, and we had a ball, man. We tore it up. We had such a great time. It was incredible.
I mean, please let me know. Please let me know the next time you guys. I want to come out and capture it on new media, man. Because all I'm trying to do is capture holistic music with cats. I mean, there was just a Little Feat tribute done by a couple of cats from Chris Robinson's Brotherhood at the Brooklyn Bowl. That music, I think it resonates so deeply because of the Gradney Hayward rhythm section. And could you talk about how they cooked the groove together and how it was unique and why you hold Hayward's and Gradney in such high regard in that respect?
They grew up different ways of the same stuff that I did. Kenny's, Kenny was born in New Orleans, so and he got the same type of. He was raised in Los Angeles, so he got the same type of growing up. His father was a well-known rhythm and blues entrepreneur, manager type guy. And so Kenny was just a little kid hanging out with all of this incredible talent. Richie, I think what happened to Richie, Richie was a Midwest kid, he was pretty much probably a rock drummer, and he probably had leanings toward the blues. Well, he did. That's why he ended up where he did.
Right.
But then New Orleans hit Little Feat. And I think my thing is Lowell George got to be very enamored, well, whatever the word is. He's digging on the meters, the funky meters.
Oh, big time.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And that's when Little Feat turned into that other thing, that second line funk,
Oh, definitely. The Zigaboo thing. Yeah, no, I dig it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The way the some punctuations and everything, the way it was all played, and syncopations and all that stuff came out of what those guys were doing, and that's when it really evolved. And when they became that band, they became my favorite band.
Wow.
And I love those guys.
You were a freak. You were a Little Feat freak. You were a freak.
I was a Little Feat freak, without a doubt. And then later on, I got to be friends with Kenny and Paul, and Billy Payne and Sam, and I would go hang out and see their gigs sometimes, but I never really ever played with them. And then after Richie died, they carried on with the drummer that was on the road with them, Gabe Ford. Really great young guy, great drummer. And but so this opportunity came up for me to play with them, and of course I've always told them, I said, look, I'm not going on the road right now, but if you want me to,
I mean,
I would come and play with you guys anytime.
And that would be wow. I mean, that's And they've just kept themselves. I guess also they had Sam Clayton there as he wasn't. They didn't have double drums, but he was he was in some ways he didn't let everybody push and pull each other. Everybody had to stay together.
He was Sam. Yeah, Sam was the timekeeper basically.
And Gradney too. Yeah.
Richie. Yeah, exactly. Solid. And Richie played around the way he swung his own style across all of that. You know what I mean? And it was incredible. It was unbelievable. You know, I mean, and when I said to the Little Feat guys, I'll do this anytime. I don't want any disrespect to ever go out to Gabe, who's doing the gig at all. I would mean that in no way.
No.
But this opportunity to play with them was really wonderful a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great time, and we're all friends, and that's the most important thing. Is that now at this point, losing some sort of edge of competitiveness and everything. Right. You know, everybody's just like happy to be healthy and playing music and playing with each other. That's really a wonderful thing, man. It feels great. It really feels great.
Well, we're one final question in set one. I think we're going to have to do set two. But set one here, I'd like you to what is the most vexing thing about this shuffle book that right now? And because I'd like to think that maybe I could be of assistance to you in the sense of maybe you just need to tell why you wrote the book. But why has the book not been written?
Well, the reason why I'm writing a book is several educators and people have come up to me and said, you should write a book on the blues shuffle. You know, you seem to have a grasp of it and everything. And then, of course, now I've got the history that as I've showed you,
sure.
Exposed, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, the book has to have those stories about the history that I told you. That's part of the narrative. I want each chapter to have that narrative of where it came from, why the Detroit thing, why I call it Chicago, why I call this a stumble shuffle, where it came from, how I got it. I'm not going to go back to, I don't know if I'll go back to tribal origins on them, you know, but I will douse it with a little bit of that tribal origin thing and everything, you know, to let people know that this didn't come from some guy down the street that just played a weird thing called a shuffle in one day, you know what I mean? So I want it to be not just educational and explain how to play it. There's a musical demonstration that goes along with it. I don't know why I haven't finished it, and I should be, you know, I should have somebody chasing me around with a whip right now, you know. Because
what's left to be done? I mean, is it actually just
not a lot. I got a guy who can help me and transcribe it. You know, I'm a busy guy, man. I go from one record to the other.
Oh, it's good.
Now.
No, it's you know what it is. I think the most important thing truly is that, you know, coming off of seeing these cats that came to this workshop that Billy had, they, you know, the travesty of it is, Braunagel, is that these younger peeps, man, they are so gifted and they have good feel, and you know they don't have, and they have studio sessions, but they don't have any gigs. They're not on the bandstand enough, you know, and so it's like. You know, I asked this guy point blank, the guy who was chosen as, I mean, I interviewed Dom, Billy, Dean Brown, and then this younger cat, Santiago Roberts, and he's a monster. He's great, and he's somewhere in South America, somewhere in that range, but just a brilliant guy. And I said, well, you know, what kind of gigs you got when you after this trip? He said, you know, after he just kind of putzed around, but he said, you know, he has some record dates.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
right.
record dates, that's not going to help develop, you know what I'm saying? Like every drummer from Mickey Roker to Pete LaRocca to Joe Chambers to Max Roach, you can tell who each person is.
Right.
Okay. So,
right.
You know, that to me is, the reason the book is important is because you need to spell out the fact that where does the lineage, how far does the lineage stretch out, and how did the individuality come about? I think about the Jabo Stark story about playing that hit tune from the elders hand clapping. That is essential.
Right.
That's essential stuff for peeps, even if it inspires 2 or 3 peeps. It's that understanding to know how to be yourself in this time of berserker capitalism or whatever what you want to call it, and you know, with all the things that are going on. You know, so I think that there's an onus there to get it out, and you know, maybe obviously you would have to incorporate your own personal experiences as well with all the stuff, with all the world music that you were marinating in?
Well, Dom Familaro said to me early on when he said, "This is your responsibility. You have to do this." He said, "You know this, and you have to hand this down." And I said, "Well, sorry, but I don't feel like an elder yet.
Right.
Not age wise, just in my own status as a musician. I'm just being, and that's not false humility. It's just the truth. I just, it's like, okay, I get it, but I don't. That's not the driving force here. It maybe is becoming the driving force a little bit more. I'm starting to feel that creep into the reasons why in my heart and my body and my soul or whatever that I should do this, And I'm not afraid of it not being the end all and be all and definitive book. I'm not worried about the competition about and I'm not worried about what other people are going to say. I mean, I did some YouTube stuff at a sound check once for Drum Magazine where the guy asked me to play my version of a double shuffle, and I did, and I jazz it up, and I got my own little roughs in it and my own little things that I do that I maybe learn from someone else, or it's a combination of different people. And I said it's Tony Braunagel double shuffle, and man, I got feedback from so many purists that go, "That's not a double shuffle. This is a double shuffle."
Well, I think
I just laughed. I just thought, this is great. I'm glad they're saying that. Everybody's, at least it's like it's inspiring people to talk about it.
Well, here's the other thing is that by doing it, it can lend additional. You talk about winding down, or like I'm 39. People are saying you need to write a book. I'm like, no, I don't. I need to fucking become a syndicated radio host. That's what I need to do.
Right.
I'm not there yet.
Of course you do.
Okay, but with you, this provides a new lease and a new hobby. What I'm saying is the book gets written, all of a sudden you're doing clinics with, on the shuffle, because that, dude, so you have the book, the motivational speaking and teaching the shuffle, because that's the thing that the younger cats struggle with, is playing the shuffle. And to me, like that, so you're not going anywhere, man. You're going to be more relevant than ever before. Of course, I'm not trying to plan your life for you, but I mean, I'm just saying that writing a book is a gateway towards more opportunity. Really.
Oh, I totally listen. All of the companies that I endorse have all said, whenever you're ready, you got our support. So I can go out and do the clinic thing, and the clinic thing's gone down.
Right. No, I did. Yeah, you're on top of it.
I'm not going to do the clinic just so I can make $1,000 every time I get up and talk and play a little bit and do the shuffle.
Right.
Right. In fact, the fees have gone way down. I'd probably be lucky to make $500 or a few $100, but still, for me to get on a plane and go out and do this in several places, one, I've got to make sure that the demand is there. You know what I mean? And I think that hooking up with the right people, publishers, and our Dom Familaro, for instance, because he's my guru when it comes to that, the educational side.
Sure.
That would open up, and yes, I could do that if I stopped working. But what's happened was I decided to continue my lateral move in my career of becoming a producer, which started in like 1996, 7, 8, right around there, when I first started really trying to consider that, and then I probably did my first production around 97 or 98. And then I've just, that's been my lateral move. Well, it caught on fire the past 4 or 5 years, but so I'd probably say 8 or 10 years ago, it started really coming along. And so now I'm doing that all the time, and the phone keeps ringing. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'd like to talk to you about making a record with you.
Your hair's on fire, dude. You're on fire. All right, yeah.
I am.
I'm just going to leave you with this. I'm going to leave you. Listen, I'm just telling you this, is that tuck this into your cap for what it's worth, because your hair's on fire. But yeah, I think Billy loses money doing these things. So like this is sometimes your calling, and somehow you have to find a little bit of room at some point to also continue to enlighten peeps. I mean, obviously people, but I'm just saying, like that nobody's making dough on this stuff. That was the takeaway I did from the round table with those guys. It was like, feed your family, stay sane, keep both feet on the ground, and be the giver. I mean, drummers are the leaders of the bands, and they like you said, you don't give off emotion from your hands and your arms and shoulders. It's from your heart. So you guys,
it comes from your heart.
yeah,
Exactly.
So I mean, I had a ball, man. I hope we can do part 2 in the next week or two. It was just, I had a great time with you, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious you and I could go on for a while.
Well, we just cooked for 90 minutes, dude. I mean, and I'm not sure even what, and I don't remember what we said. So
Wow.
that was a good thing, man. So I'm gonna be bouncing these stories all over the net and Facebook.
Okay.
And it's so good to connect with you, man. And honestly,
And you too, Jake.
I do want to connect with my generation. I'm doing it more and more now. And so if there are some Gen Xers, younger cats that you're working with in the studio, I would love to connect with some of my peeps and talk to them as well, because I mean, it all goes full circle. So just, I'll throw you some names, or if you get an idea, I just would love to. I have to talk to my generation too. That's how it will continue.
Oh, well, you should. But I appreciate that you're dragging us older guys out of here, but to get part of this, because that's you should get as much history as you can.
Tony, it's been 6 years, man. I mean, this is like, and what I'm realizing is what's cool is that there is a new generation. There is. I didn't know that before because I was just in with you guys, but now there is a.
I respect that. I want to say that I mentor some young guys, and I'm really respecting where they're coming from, man. They're not just Spotify kids. They're really. I think there's a great young generation out there that's just kicking ass, and they're doing it really well. Having kind of talked down about the business earlier in this conversation, I'd like to lift it up and say there's a lot of new talent out there that I have great respect for, and I like the direction that they're going.
Tony Braunagel, have a beautiful Saturday, man. I'll get you a copy. Send me a picture that you'd like, preferably from like the buttermilk bottom days, and I'll get the web post up. and we'll be in touch, man. Much love to you, brother.
All right. Thank you very much, Jake.
Later on. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Great drummer, Tony Braunagel. That ends the Jake Feinberg Show. We're signing off a little bit early today. Always a pleasure here on Power Talk. We'll be back next week. Peace.